If you weren't here in the demo this morning for permitting, we are looking at the Citizenserve webpage, and this is where we log in as staff. There's a little login button here. So I'm going to try to, let me share my screen, and I'll share the movement in my screen. So I'm going to try to give you cues. When we log in on the staff side, I'm going to say, let's put on an imaginary name badge, and I'll tell you the name of the user that you'll be. But we're actually going to start again out in the portal. So I'm going to pull up the Citizenserve portal. Oh, here I'm logged in from this morning. Let's just log out so you can see it. The portal, again, allows you to allows your citizens to access your services. And from here, I want to show you complaint types, right? We're in section 231 on how to submit a complaint. And I know that you take these through your 311 system. I want to show you how the portal does it. Kara, quick tip or quick point to you. Did the proposal request an interface to the portal from the variant system for their 311 call?
It did.
Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to mimic that request process. And I'm going to show you two different forms because remember, our key here is that we are configurable. That should be your take home. When you see a screen here that doesn't list the information that you would want to see in Rochester, don't worry, we would build your forms to show the data that you want to see. So we're going to submit just the complaint that you requested in the scenario about a leaky pipe. So I'm going to say that this is leaky pipe is making a mess on my kitchen floor. And then for the type, again, it's a drop-down menu, so this is configurable. I'm going to select code enforcement, and now it's asking me for the parcel address. So I'm going to type in 861 Visalia, and when I click find address, it's going to search our database, and it finds the record, and it lists parcel and property ownership data. Now, if you wanted to add category or type or description or anything else on this form, we could add those fields for you. But this is all this form includes. So I'm going to submit it. And that's going to send our request to the staff side. Now, I also want to show you what a request looks like because the form that we set up in this demo environment does include some of those things like category and type and upload a photo. So I'm going to just go to general requests and I just want to show you this form. This is just to show you more complication. So this request would mimic your 311 system. It would be that type of request. So we'll say street light is burned out. And we'll say at 4th and Main, which is an intersection. We won't have a parcel record for that. Now for the type of this request, we of course can list any type that you want. These are broken down into these 4 categories, either a public information request or a request, and either of those requests could be related to a specific address or not. But since this is a street light, we'll say that it is related to a specific address, and it'll pull up this address entry, except I'm putting in an intersection. So I'm just going to type in 4th and Main, and then I'll click find address. And it's not going to find a parcel record for this. So it's going to ask me if I want to enter a different address or if I want to use this one. Now we can lock down the system and we can make it enforce good addresses from your address database, but we can also allow entries like this. You get to decide on a per application basis what kind of requests or addresses you'll take. So now it's giving me a prompt to select the general type. So I'll say streets, sidewalks, and traffic signals. And now it's prompting for a category. So the way that this form is rolling out is every time you answer a question, it's providing you with an appropriate next step. So for this category, it's going to be street lights. And now we're asked to describe the request in detail. So this is, the description here is going to be, it's very dark at night. Please replace street light ASAP. Now we have the ability to have the user upload photographs or even take photos and upload them. I'm going to click select file and it takes me to my my directory, and let's go into my code enforcement. And I'm just going to upload a picture of a burned out light bulb. This is I think my one joke for code enforcement, and there it is. So if we were on our telephone or on our cell phone, we could have taken that photograph and uploaded it right from our device. But now I'm going to submit. So this is submitted 2 different requests, just so you can see the code complaint that went through for your scenario, and then a form that has more details and more ability to get really fine-grained. So now we are going to jump over to the staff side. So we're going to we've been acting as a citizen here, and I didn't give you any cues like you're wearing a baseball cap or, you're sitting outside in your backyard drinking iced tea or whatever as you're doing this request, but this is the citizen portal. So we're going to jump out of this. So let's put on an imaginary name badge, and we're going to log in as Lucas Andrews. So here we are again in the staff side of Citizenserve, and I'm going to refresh this because we've just sent those new requests through. Now, in this list, you can see that I do a lot of the same requests or complaints in the system for my demos. Our two are at the bottom. The address that we entered for our leaky pipe or our leaky PIP in this case is 861 Visalia Street. And here's our online request at 4th and Main. So let's open up this online complaint and take a look. This is what a code compliance case looks like. Because I selected the activity from my task list, it displays here on the Activities tab, and we can complete this activity. But I'm going to walk you through this case just so you can see it. So we start with the History tab in Code Compliance. This gives the ownership information. It gives the categories if we had any. We didn't add any on the form, but we could certainly add some now. From the category list, we could select like property maintenance. This would be our leaky pipe. And we can click Save, and that adds a category. So with this category field, we can also add notes. So if we got a phone call from the complainant saying, I'm calling for a status update, we could select phone call up here. And remember, we're a configurable site, and everything you see in a dropdown was configured for my demo environment. We could list any other type of note type that you might want to call. Is this an over-the-counter visit? Do you want to track an email? You can select any note type there. And we'll say complainant is calling for status update. And when we save this, this is going to save this to the notes field on our history screen. We can see it there. And then for full file history, you have an audit trail here that shows us where we submitted it and all of the activities that have occurred. And this will track the history through the whole status of the whole caseload. So when a code case comes through the internet, or when a code case comes through the portal, your inspectors have the option to create an inspection activity. We can look at this case and decide, is this just a question, or are they actually making a complaint? Should this just get closed down? In this case, we're going to add an activity, and this is going to be an inspection activity. So it defaults to that because we're in the code enforcement environment, and we're just going to add today's date. Now, it's defaulted a due date on here. This is the type of inspection that doesn't have a timestamp on it. We're not going to do a completion date. I'm just going to create this by saving it, and now it's added it to my activity. So I can complete my online complaint if I wanted to log the work that I've done. But let's go take a look at the property file. Now, we have the ability in this system to log if there are duplicate records. I know that that was a big deal, is how do we keep from having duplicate records created? In my demo environment, I don't have any helpful tips about there being a duplicate record. So let's go out to the property record, and I want to show you from top down what that looks like. So I'm going to click the binoculars, and we'll view this additional property information. And you can see now we're at a property record. So we are parcel based. This represents the top of the pyramid. All of our related data falls underneath the property record. So here we have parcel data. We're on the property tab. All of this data came from the parcel record, from that best source of parcel data in your system. Now, this is a very limited basic set of parcel data. We can bring over as much data as you need, and we'll look at other records in the system today that have a lot of property data defined. Any files that are associated with this address are going to be listed on the Files tab, and we can see that there are 3. So here's my leaking PIP that I just submitted, and look, there is another code enforcement case here. So what we want to do right now is think about merging these requests. I'm going to just go right into this other request to show you. This one has a couple of details. These details are all the same, right? It's all the same address information. But here was an update made on 6/19 where the complainant is still calling for an update. So we have got maybe a frequent complainer putting in multiple requests. So let's merge these files. I am going to pull in just our administrative user. I'm going to just take a copy of this file number if I can, and I don't have to type it. So I'm going to pull over my administrative user, and I'm going to go to the Reports tab. Let's go to the Reports tab. So we have the ability to merge some data. I have this Merge Files report. It's just sitting in my my administrator user. I can share this report with other users. So I've copied in, move this original file into a new file. Maybe we'll make this the original file, and we'll move the other file into it. So I just am going to put the first record there, and let's go back. And let's look at our original file. This was the one that we just created today. So if we look at the history file on this one, this is my leaky pip. Isn't it nice that I misspelled it so we're able to keep it distinct from my other one? So I'm just going to copy this file number, and I'm going to drag this entry window back over here. So I want to put the new file into the old file. So there's my new file, there's my old file. And when I click the Run button, it's telling me that this file is now combined into that one. So now in our 2178, when I refresh this, I'm going to see all of my notes from the other file imported into this one. So now we have our 2 phone calls. We have all of our different inspection activities created for this, or our different notes added. On the contacts file, we have the 2 different contacts for each of these complaints. And then on the activities file, we would see any activities listed here from both cases. So we have the ability to do this, to merge these files. We also will have the ability to show messaging at the top. If a second violation came through, you could have it, you could have it display in red up here. This is there's a duplicate violation listing, and we'll have to see that as we go through some of these other scenarios. So right now, we are going to, I know that you want to communicate out with either the property owner or the tenant, and you have a set list of notifications that you would send out. If you wanted to notify the landowner or the property owner at this point that there was this case opened, we could generate a letter. We could also do this through an email. It just depends on how you want to communicate. So we could select the property owner, and I'm going to select a warning letter. Now, this is just a template that is defined in the system. I'm just going to select an activity that was just a pop-up to help pull in data. This is just a template that was defined for this environment. So this could be your first point of contact to see, just to let you know this code complaint was entered. We plan to follow up on this date. Now this one says an inspection is being scheduled in 2 weeks. It's to address this issue, and then it gives some contact information. We can save this letter, and then it can either be printed out or it could be attached in an email and sent. And you see it's taken us to the Documents tab where we get to see that letter has been generated. So we provide the ability to either send an email or to send a letter that's generated by the system, or to do both in this system. So if we go to the portal and we act as the complainant again, we'll view our requests. We are going to look at this file. This is our complaint. I'm going to just do a little refresh. We don't have any activities listed yet. On the Documents tab, we can see that warning letter that's come through, so that we as the complainant can see that this has gone to the property owner. Now, we have the ability to control what gets displayed here. So if you don't want the complainant to have this information, it can be hidden, but that was the letter that was generated on the file. Now, if the complainant needs to contact you, they can just use this Leave a Message button. So they can say, my landlord or landlord and we'll submit that message. So we are able to direct this portal activity either to an individual or to the unassigned task list. It all depends on what works best for you. So I'm going to come back here into the staff side, and we'll go look at the home page for this user. And let's talk a little bit about the unassigned task list. So here's the task list for this user. We have all of these requests and inspection activities. This is work that he's been assigned specifically that he's going to need to go out and do. But there's also this unassigned activity queue, and this is how work can get routed to. So we can see there's this leaky pipe is soaking through the kitchen floor. This is listed as an online message. Now I can get to this message from the file itself, but this is how you would get to it if you weren't actively in the file. Because who is going to be actively in the file when a message comes through? So here again is our same case that we opened up. And on the Activities tab, we're going to see this online message. So here is where we can access this message and we can communicate back with our applicant or with the complainant. So maybe at this point, we need to schedule an inspection activity. I'm going to schedule this activity by clicking over in the activity window on the left-hand side of the screen. Now, if you know that all of your these complaints that come through are automatically going to have an inspection activity, you wouldn't go through this manual process. We would build that for you automatically. But with these code inspections, this was just defined to have the staff member add an inspection activity if it came through the portal. So I'm going to add a start date. It has a due date assigned, and I'll save this. Now, we can go out on site. Oh, look, and I did this on my other one. So we've got all of these inspection activities generated because I have shown you and I've converted, so we've got a lot of extra ones in there. I want to go into this online message activity that we were just looking at, and I'm going to add a completion date. So I'm going to add today's date, and I'm going to just make a note that we scheduled inspection activity. So we'll save this activity. Now for our inspection activities, if you notice, I've got a couple that are tracked here. None of these are complete, so I have the ability to delete these out of the system. But this could be role-based. We could lock this down if you didn't want your inspectors to be able to do this. And see, I have duplicates here because I just keep opening them up. So I'm going to delete that one too. And now we have one inspection activity. So I'm going to go into this activity, and I think what we'll do is we'll actually get in the truck and we'll go out to the site and we'll do this activity on site. So let's just take a minute, pull up my iPad, because of course I would beat you since I'm on the West Coast, but it is a make-believe town that we're going to. So I'm going to log into the system on my iPad Pro. This is a good time to remind you that Citizenserve is browser-based. You don't have to load any apps to get here. You can run our platform on any browser, right? So it could be an Android device, it could be your laptop. In this case, it's an iPad Pro. I'm going to just give this guy, we just logged in, so we should have everything here. I'm going to look at these things that are due to limit his task list. And now we can see that we have these online complaints listed here. So let's go take a look at this file just so you can see. We've got access to the same case. So when I go to the history file, we see all of this information listed. When I click on the activities tab, like I came here by going to the online complaint, but here we can go into this inspection as well. So let's complete this inspection on our iPad. Now we haven't seen an inspection activity yet. This is specifically a code enforcement activity. It's an inspection activity. So I can do things like open up the violations window. That's this little triangle here. We have a couple different ways to do it. If you wanted to, you could check off all these boxes for the different violations that are listed. And this gives you the ability to filter by section. So we would load your sections in here, and we would load your violations. If I wanted to look at different animal violations, I would see this listing here. If I wanted to change the section listing, I could look at CMC, and I could see this entry here. You know, this reminds me that you have something called right of entry that was called out in your script. I wasn't sure what this process was. Is this a notice that you have to send or text that you have to include? Jill or is anybody else in code enforcement, could you just give me a little details about that?
We have to note when we do an inspection whether it was done from the right of way. If the tenant gave us permission to come into the property, we have to make note of our access or how we gained access to what we saw at every visit.
Oh, okay. So this one I added to the violations listing. So if we add this and put notes that we entered it through the right of way and that the tenant let us, this would be listed as a violation. So that might not be ideal. We won't do that in this case. But that sounds like that might be a good review task to add, or a checkbox on the activity that the code compliance officer would fill out. And, you know, we could have checkboxes to say the tenant allowed or the landlord allowed, or I don't know if they left the key under the mat. All of those options are fine.
Right. Perfect.
So I'm going to go back into this violation entry, and I'm going to switch to a different view to show you the other way to enter these violations. So I'm switching to the single violation entry window, and this is like a wizard. So before, in the previous screen, you could just check off the boxes and you could add the follow-up date and it would do it all for you. This way is a one-by-one entry. And if you notice, the only required field is code. That little red hash indicates required. So if I look at the code dropdown, I don't speak code. So that isn't where I'm going to enter my data. I'm going to go to the description box, and I'm going to select my description out of here. And I'm trying to think. We wanted leaky pipe, right? So I've entered a few. Like if I change this section to limit my view, I'm going to go to property maintenance, and we'll see if I've hidden that specific description for you guys. I can just select something as generic as maintenance of dwelling by owners, or if there was a specific code about leaky pipe, I could select that one. I'm just going to select this one, just so I don't have to dig around in my system anymore. But now I can enter a follow-up date. This field is going to allow me to schedule a follow-up activity automatically. So if I want to do it a month out in the future, or if I want to do it 2 weeks out, let's get this out of the way. That's all the way in August. That's maybe too far out. So let's go to, say, the 13th of July. We'll give them 2 weeks on this one. I can't believe it's already July. And then in the comments field, we can make a note of this if we wanted to. Now, I selected the maintenance of dwelling owners description activity, but what I wanted to show you is that it populated the code number from our drop-down list, and there's that ... which is more information. So when I select this one, it's going to show you this listing right here. And I'm just going to look at my notes to see if there was any other inspection type that I wanted to add, in case I want to do some magic on the back end. To a different environment. Okay, so here we have this description listed, and I can provide additional comments if I want. Now, I can use all of the tools available. So if I want to peck out on my screen, I can use this keyboard, but I can also go to voice to text. Fix leaky pipe in tenant's kitchen by return date. So now that has completed this activity. Now I just hit save. I could have hit save and add another, and it would have cleared these screens out, and we could have entered another one. But this pop-up that has shown up is asking if I want to schedule a follow-up. So this is a really easy way to get another event on my calendar. So we'll show that we've added that activity, we've added a violation, and we can even, if we've taken any photographs, well, we can do two things. We can take a photograph, and that is the what we're looking at is the inside of my case. Let's see if I can not take a picture of my finger for you. Here is my monitor. So we can take a picture on site, and we can say, use this photo. I think I just locked my screen up. Let's unlock it. We'll say, use this photo, and it'll ask if I want to compress it. I'll just say, do it small. And now we can give it a description. My monitor. And we'll save that. But we can also, if you have photos in your device, you can click that attach button, the little paper clip, right? And we will hit select files. And we'll just pick from my photo library. Let's see if I have a leaky pipe in here. I do. So there's a picture of my leaky pipe. That's horrible. We will upload this. We can also give it a description. Leaky pipe. Now, we also have the ability to associate this photograph with an infraction or violation. So there we've selected it from the dropdown. This would be true if we had multiple photographs for multiple violations. You could just ping, 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 go associate them here. So we'll save this. So here in this activity, we've logged the violation. We have uploaded a photograph. And let's go ahead and what we would do next in this environment is to generate a violation notice. So I know that that's on your list, it's in your things to do, but remember, as I show you these templates, this template was designed for this environment. So I'm going to just add a completion date and a status. This is going to be a follow-up as required. And I'm going to save this to complete this activity. And then I'm going to generate the letter from the left-hand side. But as I was saying earlier, this is a template that's defined for this environment. It doesn't, we can set your template up in any way. So we took a photo of my monitor and I uploaded a photo. If I click the show thumbnails, it's going to show me the pictures. And I'm just going to include the picture of the leaky pipe. And then I'll submit. Now, in this letter generator, we've just attached a picture to the document, and now it's asking if I want to include the certified mailing number. This is just an example of a letter variable field. So if you need to collect a hearing date or a license number or a signature from the tenant, we can build that in as a variable right here. You can have the tenant sign, or you could do that in the activity as well. But this is just a way to get information into that document. So I'm going to put in a letter variable for a certified mail. And now I'm going to generate this letter. So here is that notice. It's in the template for the town of Buena Vista. It includes the violation information, the description that was put into the system, right? That was there when we selected the violation. And then the comment, fix leaky pipe in tenant's kitchen by return date, plus the corrected by date. And then we have the photograph that I uploaded. So the whole idea here is that you can use the print button and you can print it out to the Bluetooth printer in your car if you have one, or you could print it to your Google printer back in your office, or what we're going to do is we're going to save it, and it's going to save it to file and you can process it later. You can send it out from the office if that's what you need to do. So it's showing us this documents tab. It's showing us that all of the history, right? The system email, the merge document, that warning letter that we generated for the property owner, the 2 photos that we uploaded, and then the notice of violation that we've just sent. So this, in a nutshell, is how to track a complaint and then do an inspection on an activity, and how we generated some notifications, some letters. So we have a lot to cover. The next thing we want to talk about is high grass and weeds, but I can see it's time to head back to the office. Let's go get back in the truck. Phew, that was a quick trip. Here we are back at the office. Let's do a refresh on this. We're going to pull in the data that we did, the data that we processed. And now we can see that our inspection activity has been completed. We see it in follow-up required state. Plus, we have this reinspection activity that was automatically loaded by the system, and it's scheduled for that due date that we added as our follow-up date. So that was a really helpful trick. Now, we looked at the Documents tab on my tablet. Just wanted to show you that I'm pulling any punches here. This is the same file. And now let's go look at the Violations tab. Here we can see the listing. If you had multiple violations, you would get them all listed here. You can access each one. You can abate them here. You can put in a disposition. You can close it. The disposition is abated or unfounded, but remember, it's a drop-down list. So if you have other types of disposition, we would just log those there. And then this is the photograph that was uploaded. So we see our leaky pipe, and it's available here. It's also available in the Documents tab, just so you can get to it from more places as you need to. So, and then we don't have any fees associated with this case yet. If we did, they would be listed here. So this is code enforcement, but I wanted to show you just a little bit back on the home page. It was something that I flipped by kind of quickly. When we went to that unassigned task list, what I normally do is I do this from the building department. And we see all of our building department's activities here. If you have a central office that's going to assign these tasks out, we could route it to one individual in that office, and they could assign the work out. from the unassigned activity list, you can check the box to assign it to yourself. You can also assign it to other people in the department. Now, you can also look at this work on a map view. So when I click the map, it helps if I really click on it. Then it opens the map with those activities on the file, and we can see I'm zoomed in kind of close, so we're seeing 2. And I might have one at 2 different activities, so they might be under the same map pin. So in the system, remember, if we see a map pin, we can click on it and we get additional information. So this is an online message for the business licensing department, and it's routed to this user because he has access to business licensing. Now, this one is another activity that when we click on the pin, we see the details here, and we can also assign this work to ourselves. I wanted to bring this map up to show you how we can load in your GIS layers. So from a map view in Citizenserve, we can display your GIS layers and allow you to list this data. And then any parcel data that's associated, we can display as a pop-up. And we don't have much data here in these. We don't have parcel data for all of these parcels. We can also load multiple layers. So I'm going to add the zoning layer. And this is a color layer that's going to overlay this. And then I'm going to take off the parcel layer so you can see we've got some pink added in here. And now let's take off that parcel layer. And now we just have the zoning layer displayed. So we can come back and zoom in on our cases here, and we can click on this zoning layer, and it pulls up that zoning information. That's RSL. This is OS. This is R1. So whatever layers you have, we want to load them into the system for you so that you have this information at your fingertips. It'll help you work through the system and get your job done. Now, we wanted to see how we could close this case. So we're going to do a quick close. And I know I've got a couple tabs open. I'll close this one. Here is our leaky pipe is soaking into the kitchen floor. This is one that we combined from 2 different cases. We went out and we did an inspection. We didn't have to go that far, but what we want to do is show how to close this. So if you go out to the activities tab, we've got a couple of we've got a reinspection activity and this online complaint. We would have closed this when it first came in, right? Because we scheduled an inspection activity. So I'm going to give a completion date, and we can leave a note. You can give as much of a note as you want, and then I'll say that this is complete. And that is going to close down that activity. So we have 2 complete and 2 open. Now this online message, I didn't give a status to. So when we give it a complete status, notice we already did this note here and we added a completion date. So I'm going to save this, and that's going to update this activity as well. So our last item is this reinspection. But what if we just get a call from the tenant to say, hey, everything's fixed? So we can track that here, or we can log it as a note on the front of the case. But really what we want to do is close this activity down. So we'll say tenant called, landlord fixed leaky pipe, okay to close. And then we can give a completion date. Let's say it's in the future at some point, and our status would be violations corrected. Now we could go into that individual violation and we could edit it here. So let's select that violation and we'll click that ... We're just going to open it up and allow us to edit it. Here we go. So here is our violation information. We're going to say that this has been abated and we're going to close it. That populates it with a close date. We're going to future date it. We'll pretend that it's the 16th or the 6th, and we'll save this. So at this point, when I close this activity, it's going to throw a warning for me. It's going to say all activities have been closed. Would you like to close this file? We'll say yes. And now we can give it a disposition date. This is going to be abated. These are the different options that are available, but this is configurable. So we're going to say, maybe we'll change it to voluntary compliance, and we can update the close date, and we will save this activity. And now we have closed this code compliance case. So this was the first example of code, and we're doing this in my demo environment. But to talk about high grass and weeds, we're going to jump out into another environment. We are going to go into Middletown, Ohio. Let's go over here to Middletown. So we are logged in as Amanda Hunt. So let's update our name tag to be Amanda. They have a great set of tracking that they do with work orders. So when they get a high grass or weeds, they go and they create an activity, or they create a code case. Now, I'm going to just click create, and I'm going to select code enforcement, and we're going to call this a nuisance. You can say weeds. If I wanted to add a complainant to this, I could add a complainant by clicking add contact, and then I could search. I'm just going to search by first name. So this complainant, me, does not exist in this system yet. And this is doing like the most simple search that you can enter. It's looking for anybody with the first name of Misha, and they're not found. So we're pretty safe bet that I don't exist in this database. So I'm going to just add myself, and I'll even. So I'm only going to put in my email address, and I'll activate my account, and then this will allow us to look at it later. So if somebody calls in and they've never used the system yet, you don't have to put in a ton of information. You don't actually have to create a portal account for them. I'm able to set a password right here, and then I can list that I'm a complainant, and I can save this. So that's going to create a record for me, and I'll be able to log into the portal to check out this, to check out the status of this file. And now I'm just going to put in the property address of 710 Charles, and we'll again use that magnifying glass to find our address. There we go. And I'm going to select the house. Now we can log how this was received. This was a phone call. We could indicate the district. We could indicate the category. They don't have so they have all of this weed stuff related. I'm not going to add a category at this point. And now at the bottom, it's going to allow me to add an activity. Let's go ahead and add an inspection activity. So here, we're just going to add a start date and a due date. If we were going to go out on a different date, we could schedule a different due date. And the status will be. Now, these statuses don't really have scheduled included, but again, if we wanted to set a schedule or a status, we could. But we'll go ahead and save this activity, and this is going to create our code case. So here we can see it. We've already gone through one of these, so you know what the different tabs are. We can see the ownership data here. For this inspection activity, if we were really going to go out on site. Now this was created by staff member, right? So this could be somebody going through the system, going through the city and finding a case of a house that has overgrown weeds. Let's go do that inspection, so we can add a violation here so you can see. You can also add a violation here from the blue bar. As you talk to your engagement manager, you'll decide which makes the most sense for you, but there are multiple ways that we can do things. So here, I'm going to add a violation. Let's see if we've got city ordinance. And they have one that's 0678, grass and weeds. So in this case, I picked the code and it defaulted the description. So it works both ways. In the other environment, I picked the description and it listed the code violation. We'll just click the more information and you can see the description that was entered into this system. So we can give a follow-up date. And we'll say if this is a fire hazard, then maybe we want to do it in a couple days. It depends on what your case calls for. And we could add a document here. We could just upload a photograph. So we're going to click select files, and it's going to take me to my directory. I actually have get a real picture here. We will take a before picture, and we'll upload this. So this updates the photograph. It associates it with the violation. We did it a different way in the other environment. There are many ways to do this. If we had other violations, we could click save and add another. It's going to pop up this screen for me. It clears it all out and it lets me add it again. I'm not going to actually add another one. So we'll just close this one out so you can see that. Now, we have completed this inspection activity. But let's generate that notice of violation because we've added a violation. So I'm going to just add a completion date, and I will give this letter sent notice, and then let's generate a letter. So here, again, we have all of these templates defined for this environment. This is going to be based on their workflow. So you can imagine having all of your different violations listed here. I'm going to do a code enforcement notice of violation. And it's asking if I want to include any photographs. We will include that one. We can click show thumbnails. It'll show you. There's our overgrown weeds. And then we'll submit this. And then for our certified, they want a certified mail number here too. So we can include that. And now we can generate this letter. So here again is a different template built for a different environment. It's going to show some of the same information. Here's the code description. We didn't add a comment or it would be displayed here. And they have additional details that they want to include, and then they sign off with the Amanda Hunt. Now, we could have a signature in here. This user just doesn't have one uploaded to her profile, or it's not being pulled into this template for some reason. But it's definitely possible, and we'll see it in other examples. And then here's the overgrown weeds. Now, what they do is on a reinspection activity, if they complete it, and this shows us that document that's been generated. In this instance, they are going to generate a work order activity. So I'm going to add that. Let's imagine that the reinspection activity has occurred or it's time in the process to generate a work order. So we'll click add activity. And we will select the activity that we want. And in this case, it's going to be work order. So notice when I select the activity type, it gives me some additional features in here. So we are going to say we need some tall grass and weeds cutting. We're going to give this a start date and a due date. We'll say we give them, how about we give our contractor till the 10th. So they have 2 weeks to get that done. The work description is going to be please mow weeds and bag clippings. So all we do here is create the work activity, and then we want to generate the work order. So we, again, are going to use our letter generator. And in fact, maybe I'll save this activity. You notice we've got these activities on the top right that do the work, but we also have them in the blue bar on the left. And while this completes, here we go. Now our letter generator has popped up. So we are able to select a work order, and this is going to be for our contractor. So when we generate this, did I even set a contractor? This is an important point, right? If I'm going to assign work to somebody, I need to assign it to a contractor. So here I can click add contact, and I can add, oh geez, it's All Star Lawn that I want. Sorry to shout with my all caps. Let's search again. Here we go. So this is going to pull up this contractor who's already a contact in our system. It's going to pull their data in. So now when I generate this letter, they're going to get this work order, or at least it's going to let me generate it for them. So now we see our contractor listed, David Dunsel from All Star, and now I can select the work order. And when I click generate, it's going to send them the information that I entered on my form. So this is a form that's going to get printed out and mailed off, or it could send as an email. I'm going to save this. It's going to generate that document and it'll add it to our case file. So here we see that work order. Now they track this. When the contractor gets this information, they go do the work, they take a before picture, they take an after picture, and they send it all back to the city. And then the city employee goes in and tracks that information, and they can do it right through that work order activity. So when we go back to that, if we receive that invoice, we can upload it, but we can also just track it in the system. So they just update this. They say this work was done on, whatever date they received that that information, and then they can go in and they can put in, when did the work happen, how many hours did it take, and then they do some calculation here. It adds $80 here, but it also adds a separate contractor rate down at the bottom, and we'll see that when it prints out. But we can add multipliers, we can calculate rates, we can track all the dollar amounts that you need. And in this case, it's done through an activity. So when we complete this, we are able to approve this work order, and I'll go ahead and save it. So this just gives you some of the tasks that we can do, some of the forms that we can set up for you. And I know that we have a bunch of other things to talk about. So we just got a bill from the contractor and we added it to our work order. If we wanted to, we could generate a bill to the homeowner, and we could do that again through that letter generator. There were all of these options here. We could select the property owner, and we could select that that work order bill, and we could select the work order that we just did. Let's generate that. So this is that information. This again is a template that's built, but as you go through this this demo today, know that anytime I select this letter generator, we can put in whatever you need to see in the letter here. So this is the bill for this, which includes those hours that have been multiplied, and then the total amount that they're going to bill for this is $200, right? So that's based on their 2 hours at $40 an hour, and then they did this total paid to contractor times 2.5%, and then there was a dump fee, and so all of that. I think what we'll do, instead of showing you the real life case that this came from, is that I'm going to go back to Buena Vista and we're going to move on to the ticketing portion, because I know that there is a lot more to do here in this section. So let's update our name tags, right? We've been in Middleton, Ohio, but we are going to go back to Buena Vista and we're going to log in as Lucas Andrews. So whatever your workflow is, we can build it for you in the system, right? Whatever your steps are, right? First, you need to do a warning letter to the landlord, and then you need to go out and do the inspection and generate an inspection report or a notice of violation. We're going to talk about court stuff in a minute. But if you wanted to do ticketing, we just closed out our other case, but let's go back to our home. And I'm going to pull open one of these complaints that I do frequently, this rubbish left in a vacant lot. So this is the online complaint that comes through. I'm able to complete it, to say, all right, I'm going to create this. I am going to create an inspection activity on the case. And I'm going to assign it to myself. But when I save this inspection activity, it's available on my work, my task list. And now I'm just going to put in a completion date on this initial activity so that it's closed out. So when we go out and we do an inspection activity, remember I can do this from my iPad. I want to add a couple violations here so that we can add some fees. So for this particular code violation, let's go down to the description. And we will just select property maintenance. And we can select, I have a debris. We'll say visible garbage. And I'll add a follow-up date for a week out. If you had standard language like this, you could include this in the code description and it'll automatically print out. What we're doing here is a rubbish left in a vacant lot. Now, this one doesn't have a fee assigned, so I'm going to add another violation. It's going to prompt me for that reinspection based on my follow-up activity because that's programmed into this, this one. I am also going to add one for an abandoned vehicle. That's today. Should we give them more time to do that? So we've created 2 violations. I'm going to go ahead and accept this reinspection activity. Because I entered 2 different dates, it's allowing me to enter those 2 activities. So that's going to stick it on my calendar for both dates, which is really helpful. So we can generate our notice of violation. We've done this before, but I want to go through the complete process here. And let's generate our notice. Now, remember, we're in a different environment. This is Buena Vista. So the setup is a little bit different, and the letters that they have available are custom to this build. So now I'm going to generate that letter. And we're going to see our 2 violations listed. Now, I didn't upload any photographs. It would have been helpful to see. Maybe we can do that during our reinspection. But this is the letter that gets generated, and I'm going to save it. Now, let's go do that. We'll update some documents. So we'll click on the document link here, and we'll select files. Previously, I did this on my iPad where I selected a document off my iPad, but now I want to select I have a debris, there's some rubbish, and then I have an abandoned vehicle. So I'm going to pick these 2 pictures, and it's going to allow me to associate them with a violation code. So here's my abandoned vehicle, and here is my visible garbage. And now we get to take into our Documents tab, so we've got an update on this. So we've added our notice of violation, but the next thing we want to do is generate some fees. Now, I need to get into my violation here, and I need to add I'm gonna go behind the curtains here really quick. What I want to do is generate some fees on this rubbish violation, but I don't have it set up in my system to do that. So I thought I would quickly show you how I can go in to the violations. No, this is the administrative window. So I'm really like opening up the hood or showing you behind the curtain. This is the man behind the curtain. Now, or the woman behind the curtain, as it were. So we don't lock you out of anything. I'm just logged in as my system administrator, and I'm in the administration tab. If you want to do this, we'll train you how to do this. But this is what you would get when you submitted the support request. This is how they would go do this. So I am going to go into the violation types, and I am going to change my visible garbage or trash containers. And the way that we have it set up in this environment is just to put the dollar amount there in that corrective action, which is, something that I can handle in my limited ability to configure this site. I do not work at the support desk. So what I've just done is I've added a dollar amount because what I know is that we're going to want to generate a ticket activity, right? We're going to want to generate a citation and some dollar amounts. So let's go complete our initial reinspection. Let's pretend that it's the 6th, that we are coming to visit the visible garbage or trash containers. And for this one, we're going to say no weeds have been, oh wait, this is visible garbage. Sorry, I'm back in my other violation here. Garbage still on site. Generating citation. And let's pretend that it's just a 6. So we are going to say follow-up required because this is a citation, and I'm going to save this activity. That's going to complete that action, and let's go generate that letter. I'm going to send it to the property owner, and I'm going to select the citation. And now I can select the abandoned vehicle or the rubbish. I'll go ahead and, why don't I do both so that you can see? Now, we just addressed one of those violations, but I have to tell you that I put these on 2 different dates, and we have completed this date's activity. We're seeing citations generated for both because of the way my code is written into the system. This could have a caveat to it that says only correct, only cite violations that were not corrected by this date, by this follow-up date. And then that would exclude this one. But in this particular instance, this code is written to do citations for any open violation. So here we can see that a $250 fine has been added to each one, and now we can see our case photos uploaded. Stock photo, photograph. So I'll save this notice. Again, you can print it on site, you can print it back to your office, or you can save it and email it out. And that's going to update this activity. Now, when we click on the violations tab, we're going to have our 2 violations listed. And when I click on the fees tab, we're going to see those fees listed here as well. So we're able to add these fees. You're able to do cashiering on them by accessing the fee itself. You can log payments. You can log the payments right here through this little activity. So if we wanted to pay this one off, we could by just entering $250. And then this looks a little bit different than permitting, but we can modify these forms for you. This is just what's listed on this one. And we'll click save. So that has brought this balance down to $0. So that's just a little bit about ticketing. Now, we can generate whatever workflow is in terms of letters that you generate and send out. These fees were actually generated from a letter that we sent out, that citation notice. We consider that a report, but we are able to do all sorts of coding when we generate these reports. It's sort of a misnomer to just say we've generated a letter because it's doing some SQL code on the back end that generated these in the system. So I think that what I would like to do now is switch over and we will talk about court stuff. So just to take a break, I know that this is like turning on a fire hose, right? And shooting you with all of this stuff that Citizenserve can do. I'm going to take a deep breath, and I just want to take a break here and check in and make sure that you're seeing that what this is a configurable program, that we will take your requirements at the beginning of the project. We will have a meeting with you. We will run you through what we've built in the system and get your feedback on it. And you don't have to just give us feedback by that certain due date. We want you to leave that meeting and go and log into the system and kick the tires and play around and put in real tickets and generate your notices of violation or generate your warning letters, go through your workflow so that you can see that the system is working for you and to see where it's not, and then give us that feedback. Because you'll be meeting with your engagement manager weekly during the implementation process so that they can show you what they've built, have you walk through the system, and then gather your feedback. And then the next week, they'll show it again, and they'll iterate over it until you're happy with the build that you have. So I've shown you 2 different environments so far that do code enforcement. We did tickets in one, and then we did like the work orders in another one. I'm going to jump into a 3rd environment because they process their court cases through Citizenserve this way. So let's see which profile. Let's update our name badges. We're now in Mount Prospect and we're logged in as Joe. This is a code case that shows this is great. Remember how I talked about we could alert you at the top of a case if something were happening? Here is one of these red alerts. It says, this is an alert on this property, contact the building department. And in this case, you can also click on this alert pin, which is that exclamation mark, and it'll tell you that this SWO dumpster full of drywall. And then this one says, per Rafael Gasparis, dumpster in the front of the house. needs access CMC. So they've got some notes on this already. There's also this alert here in case you missed this one. So this is the file, and this is about vacant tall grass. And it says, again, not a rental. So apparently they've got some case history here. Now, this is their history file. It's got some property data. They've got some additional details here. So they're pulling in additional data from their parcel data, and they're displaying it here. So we can customize this form and show you whatever data is going to help you process this code case. And then here's the history of the file. So the way that they do it is when they find a violation, it actually assigns a hearing date, and then they go to court about it. And then there's an order that's created. So I have for you, like we're in my test environment and it's pretty slow. So let's see if this view file, perfect. This is the documents tab on this same case. So their case history is that they sent out this initial letter that there was this vacant property with some issues on it. So this is their initial contact. And that was done in May 15th of 2018. And then skip forward to August of the next year, then they found a violation. So they logged it in the system and it goes through their court process. So I'm going to explain it. They do this notice of violation that announces the hearing date. And at the hearing, there's an order. And in this particular case, this was continued. For some reason, they didn't either hold it or it was just given a new date. So they generated a new order to send out that notification to the, defendant to show up on the new date. And then at that date, there was an order. And then there was a payment made. So they have a receipt here. So I am going to show you up at the top of my screen. I have most of these documents open. So this is that first notice to the owner about the vacant property. So here it is on 5/10 of 2018. I inspected your property. When vacant properties are not maintained, they can become a nuisance. So this is saying in 2018, this was what this form looked like. It included this data. We can set up your template however you want, and that can get sent out by the system. Now, fast forward to August 2nd. They found a violation, and they generated this notice of violation, which includes the hearing date. So this says respondent is required to appear at this location on 8/29 at 10:30 a.m. for a hearing. And then that hearing was extended. Oh, here's the order from that hearing. It said it was continued by the agreement of parties. So it was put on a new date. The new date would be 9/26, continued to Thursday, 9/26. And then on that date, they had this liable by plea activity logged. So they assigned this in the order activity, and they gave it this reason, and they assigned this fine. So I've showed you the output of this, and I've walked you through the process, but I want to show you the activities for this as well. So they've got a bunch of reinspection activities, and then they've got this hearing date, right? Here was the original hearing that was continued, and then here's the one where it was found as they were liable. So in this activity, it's going to take just a second to pull it up. This was assigned to Rafaela Gaspara. It has the court date, whoever it was created by, the defendant, and then it lists the violation. So that's listed here. Oh, actually, this is the finding notice. So for each of those violations, it would be listed here, and you could put in what the finding was. It was agreement of parties and the disposition liable by plea in this case, and then they put in the fine amount. So all of these fields were filled out by the code enforcement officer while they were sitting in court. So they just logged what happened, and then they generated the actual documents by going to our document generator. And in this instance, we select the property owner, they selected the order, and it generated the order. And it's asking us to pull in data from contacts, so we'll do that. So I'm going to generate this, and then I'm not going to save it because we don't need to add another file. This is their test environment, but still, I don't like to leave artifacts around. So here is that finding decision on order that I showed you that was already generated. So we're able to process your whole court, well, your whole ticketing process through this activity log. So you get to see that there were these code inspections that that there were fail, 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 fail. Ooh, look, pass, pass, pass. And then you have the whole history here. So we want to also talk about now. So I'm ready to jump off. I'm running through this, I know, in record time. I do want to talk about inspection scheduling, and I wonder if you have any questions before I move on about anything that you've seen so far for code enforcement. Right. Then let's talk about inspecting schedules. So I know with a vacant grass, doing things on a one-off basis is not how you want to process all of the vacant lots in your municipality. So we offer the ability to process things in a batch level or across the city. So we have a couple of different ways to do it, and I thought I would walk you through some of the ways that this sort of massive inspection is done. So let's jump over to, let's see. This is St. Charles, Missouri, and they have, they use Citizenserve for their health licensing. So they inspect every restaurant or athletic club or aquatic center in their city. And because there are so many, they break them out into districts. So we're looking at Ryan Tilley's homepage, and he has a bunch of metrics on his homepage. So these are the total District 1 licenses. There's 285, and they're broken into categories. So 4 are unknown or known prior inspections or risks. Then they break them out into 92 overdue, 28 are due this month, and then there are 121 due in future months, so that you kind of get an idea of what is coming. And then they break out aquatic centers, fitness centers, and lodging establishments separately. And this is all broken out by district. So this is District 1. Here we see District 3, District 2, and District 4 and District 5. Sometimes I go backwards, I'm sorry. So in this listing, what the inspector does is they pick the license that they want to inspect. So let's do this 92 that are overdue. So I'm going to pull up this metric, and it's going to pull up a whole listing. Now, this is more work than one inspector can get done in a day or a week or a month. So they take the high-risk stuff, and they say, okay, I want to go look at this guy who had a 95 on his last thing. Oh, actually, let's go look at this one. It was 88 the last time. So when we go out to the license, they add an inspection activity manually. They get to select the inspection type, which is going to be a food establishment inspection, and then it's going to load the page. So this is showing you how, with a large group of data, the inspector can go out and select the business that they want to inspect or the registration that they want to inspect. And they create an activity, and then they would go out and do it. Now, this is a very complicated inspection checklist. In fact, I don't want to do a new one because it takes so much time to fill out, but let's go look at a previous activity. And you can see that we can build for you a checklist that covers all of your bases. In this environment, they filled out a paper form where they were doing some manual, oh, sorry, this is going to be on the inspections tab. So let's look at this food establishment inspection. This is what the inspector fills out on site, and they used to do this by paper. So they had a couple different sections that would each get infractions noted, and then it would be calculated out, and the score would be displayed. So they track their time in and their time out. They put the name of the person in charge. They check off the type of establishment, where the water and sewer comes from. And then on their form, everything is defaulted to be in compliance. And when they say not in compliance, then they're able to either add comments or select items. So this is a 5-point deduction. And this was only loaded when it said, sorry, not applicable, not in compliance. These are dynamic fields, so when it's not in compliance, they display options here. I'm going to change that back. We can scroll down. So there's a 5-point deduction there. And as we scroll down, you could see any of the other items here that were marked as not in compliance would be listed. And there were none in this section, right? These are all fine. There was only one 5-point deduction. But as we scroll down into this good business retail practices, we're going to see some other violations here because we saw some other points deduction. Here we go. There's a 2-point deduction there. And in this one, they're actually given a checklist of things or a drop-down list that they can choose from. And they're able to provide whatever points deduction. And in this case, they wanted the ability to select their different follow-up. So this was just by their request that they wanted to be able to do this. So this is a huge form, right? They've gone through, here's total 7 points deduction. As we scroll down, we're going to get to here we go. The tally, we have starting points 100, 5 deducted in the foodborne illness, 7 in the good retail practices, total score of 88. They're capturing the signature of the person in charge. So this is just a little ping file that includes that signature that they took off their tablet. And then here's where they could schedule a follow-up inspection. Now, what they do out of this is they generate, I'm going to go all the way back up to the top, sorry. They generate their inspection report. So I'm coming over here to the Documents tab, and we will find this Food Establishment Inspection Report. And we will open that guy up. So I have like a 32-inch wide monitor, but this would print normally on just a regular 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So I'm going to put it into my print previewer so you can see. So here is the first set of information. You can see, I'm sorry that it's so tiny. We see the points deduction up here, 5 points there, and then we have another 2 points here and 5 points here. And this is just so tiny, I'm sorry. But you can see all of the check marks that came through on that activity. So we're able to translate that activity form into a complicated printout, and we can include that, the data that we're collecting in that activity or the signature from this user's profile. And this is that person in charge signature that was collected. So this is how inspection assignments are done in this environment. Now, I also want to show you how they're assigning out rental inspections in Urbana. So let's update your name tag. We're in Urbana, Illinois, and this is user Tom Dwyer. They have a similar activity where they have rental registration inspections. This is just a metric that shows you the status of that process. So I could click the link, but it's going to pull up 2,300 records. We can see that they have it separated into 3 categories, right? The biggest category is the 2,062 that need a systematic inspection. The next batch is 238 that have a completed systematic inspection. And then there are 25 that are scheduled for a systematic inspection. So if I pull up this listing, you'll get to see from this list, this is what they're working from, and they can go through and complete these. Now, this is a copy of the environments, their production environment, so these are all pretty old. So this is one way to get these inspections assigned. Now, if you want to generate out inspections to put on your inspector's task list, and if you want to have them run through a set of inspections, we can do that too, and we would do that with a report. So let me check and see if this is the user that has that report. I'm going to go to the Reports tab just to show you report writing is included in your subscription. You get a standard list of reports that comes out of the box. But as you decide you want to do different types of work, or you want to automate certain things, we will create custom reports for you. We write our reports in SQL. So I'm going to pull up, here's a systematic inspection notice. So I'm going to select this report activity. This is going to select the inspector to assign them to, and you get to count, like how many from this zone are you going to generate. And I just want to show you, these are the details. Just note that in this definition, this is actually executing a SQL script. So we're able to write whatever you need to do things in this database. What it's going to do is generate an activity and assign it to Nick Hansen. but I don't have Nick Hansen's login. So I'm just going to talk you through this process. That when you run an activity like this, it's going to generate based on the count that you give it, and it'll generate that number of inspections. Now, you do have to do this one by inspector, but it will let you generate out a number of inspection activities, and then you get to control how much work you generate for your inspector. You could do it by batch, but it depends, how many vacant properties do you have out there? How many property records are affected? This is something that you want to talk to your engagement manager about and figure out how many records you have and what is the best way to get work assigned that people aren't going to be overwhelmed by, because you don't want to put a whole year's worth of activities on somebody's calendar. We've done some report writing where you've seen where I can generate a notification out to a property owner, but using our reports, we can also generate notices out to your property owners. Like if it's time for them to do a short-term rental registration, right? We can batch load all of your applicants and send out a notification, or all of your rental owners. We can send them out notices to also come to the portal and schedule an inspection. And we're going to walk through that in a little bit. I think for the certificate of occupancy renewal, we will walk through some of that. So I'm going to pull over the administration screen a little bit so that you can see some of the settings that we can make in terms of inspection settings. When we're able to accept inspection requests online, and we're able to modify the settings around those. So I'm in as my administrative user, my little horse icon up here. We can select the route here at Buena Vista. This is going to give me access to everything. Or we could select by department, and we see all of these different departments listed. In this case, I'm going to click on the portal, which is available at the route. And I want to show you just some of the settings here, because there are a lot, right? And I'm going to try to take this fire hose to more of a trickle. I will try. So I'm going to show you under permitting options the setting changes we can make for requesting permits or requesting inspections. And it is a request. So your users can come to the site. You can lock down any days that you don't want to offer inspections. So we don't do inspections on Fridays here. We're able to set a limit on the number of inspections that can be scheduled in a day. So that will be the max inspections that can be requested. And then you get to decide if you want to include an inspection time. You can allow AM, PM, or you can allow a specific time to be selected. If you want to say, here's the same day cutoff time, you can add non-inspection dates. And then there are lots of other, these are the text pages for the custom pages. I also wanted to show you a little bit about our notification matrix. How do we route things to the unassigned task list, or how do we notify staff when work comes through, or can I send an email at a certain step in the building permit process? This notification matrix manages that sort of work. So you can assign tasks by permit type to a responsible user, or you can create activities at certain steps in the process. Now, this is outside of the workflow assignment. Workflow generation. So if you need like invoices generated at a certain point, then maybe when it's you want to generate an activity separate from the workflow that is to generate an invoice. And if you want to do that, you can assign it to a specific person, or you can assign it to the unassigned activity queue. If you wanted to send it to a selection of emails, you could select like this option here, specific emails. And then you get the ability to enter in multiple people. So this is in the administrative window, but we don't lock you out of it. We will happily do this work for you. That's part of your subscription. But if you have a key user that you want us to train to do that, we can allow them to do that too. We don't lock you out of anything. All right, so this is a little bit about inspections and case management. The last part of this section is about property ownership change. So let's go back into Buena Vista and we'll look at my favorite property. If you weren't here, please, if you do have a question, feel free to interrupt me. We are going to go and search for a property record. As I said before, we're parcel based. Sometimes I'm getting feedback. I can hear myself talk. If you're unmuting because you want to ask a question, please feel free, just interrupt me and ask.
And Marcia? Misha, I'm sorry, Misha?
That's all right, that's me.
It's Albert. I had a quick question. I was having trouble with my audio earlier, so I didn't want to interrupt you after you got past this point, but
Sure.
it's about the fines that you showed during the ticket processing. Right now, the way our system's set up is that during the ticket processing, the fines are automatically basically entered in, obviously on the back end before all that happens. Now, I noticed that you have to select the fine amount. Is that something the inspector would have to do, or is that just the process on the back end? And once that's built into the system, it will be an automatic issuance of the correct fine amount associated with the correct violation?
Absolutely. We don't want you to have to do this at every violation. We want it to be in the system. I just happened to pick a violation that wasn't set up, so I added the violation fee amount.
I see. Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Is there anybody else that has a question before we talk about the property file? Okay, if it comes up, if you're thinking, man, I did have a question about something else, just interrupt me. I can stop talking. So we are parcel based, so we're going to look at this property file. We want to address property ownership changes. So the way that our system works is that when the property file is created, it is showing the ownership data on the parcel. So right now, this property shows Hedrick, William, and Sarah Family Trust as the owner. Any permit that's created after this property address is created, it's going to be created with this ownership data copied down. So if we go to the permits tab, we can see all of the permits that have been added to this project. And we can see that they go, there were some in 2019, some in 2017. So this is a full history. It shows all of these cases. We like this file. We do our demos from here. But if the property data were to change, every permit that was created under the original ownership is going to keep their snapshot of that information. And why don't I open up one of these files and I'll remind you where the ownership data lives on the permit. So this tab is going to open up this permit and it's just loading. So we see the permit history, or we see the permit application here, but we're going to go to the history tab because this is where the ownership data is stored on the permit. So here we see the ownership data here. Now, if ownership changes today, this property information is going to get updated during the periodic upload of the parcel data, which could either be nightly or weekly. It depends on when your parcel data changes, when it makes sense to do that. But when we bring in new data, it will get updated here on the property file. And then any permit that's created after that point is going to have the new ownership data. So I know that in your workflow and in the scenario here, you would like to automatically cancel things that are open and automatically like transfer files. That sort of work needs to be built into your implementation, so I don't have it to show you. In this environment, this is my demo environment, and we just have a very basic set of data. I did want to showcase an environment that has a lot of property data. So we are over here in St. Charles County. This is where we did our health environments. I've got just, this is Cottleville, Missouri, but I wanted to point out that their property file, right, this is just a property record. It includes that same baseline data up to this first gray line. And then they've asked us to create custom fields to import the rest of their parcel data. So they are including a ton of information here about the school district and the year built and the occupancy code. They wanted all of this data brought in from their parcel system because it was loaded there. So we can create for you any number of custom fields for your data to land in, and then you'll be able to view it here. Some other features that we have is there's this link to the sketch, or there's a link to the GIS. Let's see if I can open this into a new tab. I already did this on the sketch. Like, this is just a copy of a sketch that was done of this property. They happen to have it in their parcel data, so we're able to create a link to show that information. And then when I click on this GIS link, it opened up in this tab right here. It's actually going to open up their GIS. And this is putting the parcel number here into this record, but this is in their test environment, so it's not getting me very close into that. But we're able to do dynamic links that will get you to your parcel data in your GIS if you want as well.